Captain Du Jin stood at the viewing window of the Morning Star, watching the stars drift by. His dark scales shimmered under the soft bridge lights as he thought about his next mission. The Hanra were proud of their strength, and Du Jin was prouder than most. His people had earned their place as the strongest species in the Galactic Confederation. The bridge doors slid open with a soft hiss. First Officer Jaya walked in, her movements graceful despite the heavy exoskeleton all Hanra wore in space. She carried a data pad in her clawed hands. "Captain, we have received an interesting signal," she said, her voice low and steady. "It comes from the unexplored sector beyond the Midnight Nebula." Du Jin turned away from the window. His amber eyes focused on the data pad as Jaya handed it to him. "Show me," he said. The screen lit up with readings that made Du Jin's scales ripple in surprise. The signal came from a planet that should not have been able to support life. The gravity was crushing, even stronger than their homeworld. The atmosphere was thick with oxygen, a highly reactive and dangerous gas. Storms raged across its surface with frightening power. "A Class 12 death world," Du Jin said quietly. Even the Hanra homeworld was only Class 10. "Have we detected any signs of intelligent life?" Jaya shook her head. "The science team thinks it's impossible. No species could evolve to survive such conditions. Even we would struggle there." Du Jin remembered his childhood lessons about evolution on their own world. The Hanra had grown strong because their planet demanded strength. Their thick scales, powerful muscles, and sharp claws were gifts from a harsh environment. But this new world made their home look gentle in comparison. "Protocol demands we investigate any unknown signals," he said. "Set a course. We'll send probes first." The news spread quickly through the Morning Star. The crew gathered in small groups during their breaks, talking about the mysterious signal. Many laughed at the idea of finding anything more than simple bacteria on such a hostile world. The Hanra were the galaxy's apex predators. Everyone knew that. No other species could match their physical power. The ship's scientist, Sumin, spent hours studying the probe data. "Captain," she called Du Jin to her lab one day, "you need to see this." The screen showed structures on the planet's surface, not natural formations, but buildings, cities. The images were grainy, but clear enough to see vehicles moving through the streets. "Impossible," Du Jin whispered. His tail twitched with excitement and disbelief. "There's more," Sumin said. She pulled up another image. "We detected these in orbit around the planet. Satellites, space stations, ships. They're not just surviving," Jaya said from behind them. "They've achieved spaceflight, without exoskeletons like ours." "How?" Du Jin studied the images carefully. Everything they knew said this shouldn't exist. Species from lighter worlds needed special suits just to visit the Hanra homeworld. Even other predator species found their gravity challenging. Yet here was a civilization thriving in conditions that would crush most life forms. "Prepare a first contact team," Du Jin ordered. "Full environmental suits. We don't know what other surprises this world has for us." As the Morning Star moved closer to the planet, they began picking up broadcasts. The science team worked day and night to decode the signals. They found not one language, but thousands. Not one culture, but a planet full of different societies that somehow worked together. "Their art is beautiful," Jaya told Du Jin one evening. She had been studying the transmitted entertainment programs. "They create stories about creatures that don't exist, worlds that never were. Their imagination is surprising." Du Jin understood what she meant. The Hanra were practical people. They had art, yes, but it usually showed real things, great battles, historic moments, natural wonders. These beings drew impossible things from their minds and made them seem real. The ship's doctor, Min Ho, was fascinated by the medical data they collected. "Their bodies heal quickly," he reported. "They can recover from injuries that would kill most species. And their endurance. They just keep going long after their muscles should have given up." As they entered orbit, Du Jin felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride in being the first Hanra ship to make this discovery, excitement about meeting a new species, and something else, something he didn't want to admit: worry. The Hanra had been the strongest for so long. They protected weaker species, kept peace in the galaxy, and stood against any threats. Their strength was their identity. But these beings, these humans, as they called themselves, had evolved on a world that would kill even a Hanra without protection. "First contact team, report to the shuttle bay," he announced over the ship's speakers. "Standard diplomatic protocols. Remember, we represent not just the Hanra, but the entire Galactic Confederation." In the shuttle bay, Du Jin inspected his team's environmental suits one last time. The suits were necessary for most species visiting heavy worlds, but the Hanra usually only needed them for the atmospheric protection. Today, they would wear the full versions. No one knew what other dangers this world might hold. As the shuttle descended through the atmosphere, the whole crew fell silent. Through the viewport, they could see a city sprawling below them. Buildings reached into the sky, roads curved between them like rivers, and vehicles moved in ordered patterns. It looked normal. Too normal for a world that should have been impossible to inhabit. Their landing site was a special facility outside the city. As the shuttle touched down, Du Jin saw figures waiting for them. They stood straight and confident in the crushing gravity, wearing no environmental suits or support systems. Their bodies looked soft, without scales or armor, yet they moved as if the extreme conditions meant nothing to them. "Remember," Du Jin told his team, "no matter what we see, we are diplomats first. We are here to welcome them into the galactic community." But in his mind, he was already wondering, what else did they not know about the galaxy? What other impossible things were waiting to be discovered? The shuttle door opened, and Du Jin led his team out to meet the impossible species that had evolved on this death world. It was time to learn just how wrong they had been about being the galaxy's only apex predators. The answers, he suspected, would change everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. And somewhere deep inside, past his pride and his certainty, he felt a thrill of excitement. The galaxy had just become a much more interesting place. The landing pad felt strange under Du Jin's feet. Even through his environmental suit, he could feel the pull of Earth's gravity trying to drag him down. He watched in amazement as the humans walked toward them, moving as if they were taking a casual stroll in a garden. Director Park led the human delegation. He was shorter than Du Jin had expected, with kind eyes and a warm smile that seemed out of place on a death world. The director wore a simple blue suit with no protective gear at all. "Welcome to Earth," Director Park said through the translation device. "We've been looking forward to meeting you since we detected your ship entering our solar system." Du Jin's tail twitched in surprise. They had detected the morning star that early. The Hanra prided themselves on their stealth technology. He made a mental note to discuss this with his science team later. "Thank you for your welcome," Du Jin replied formally. "I am Captain Du Jin of the Galactic Confederation vessel Morning Star. We represent the Hanra species and the greater Galactic Confederation." Director Park's smile grew wider. "Please come inside. We have a comfortable meeting room prepared. Our sensors indicate that your environmental suits might be uncomfortable in our gravity." Inside the building, Du Jin and his team found themselves in a room that could have existed anywhere in the galaxy. Clean white walls, the large table, comfortable chairs. It all looked so normal. Too normal for a world that should have been impossible to live on. "Your civilization is impressive," Jaya said, trying to be diplomatic. "We didn't expect to find such advanced technology on a Class 12 world." Director Park looked confused. "Class 12? Ah, you mean the planetary classification system. Yes, we've noticed that Earth seems to be a bit more challenging than most inhabited worlds we've observed through our telescopes. A bit more challenging." Du Jin thought. That was like saying a supernova was a bit warm. The humans' casual attitude toward their deadly homeworld was starting to make him nervous. Su Min, the science officer, couldn't contain her curiosity any longer. How do you manage spaceflight without exoskeletons? The energy needed to escape your gravity well alone should make it nearly impossible. A young human named Hujin, who had been quietly taking notes, spoke up. We used chemical rockets at first. They weren't very efficient, but they worked. Now we have more advanced methods. Antimatter drives, gravity manipulation, that sort of thing. The Hanra team exchanged looks. Chemical rockets. The humans had reached space using explosions to push themselves off their planet. It seemed insane. Director Park must have noticed their reaction. Perhaps we could show you some of our facilities. Seeing might be more helpful than telling. The tour that followed changed everything Dujin thought he knew about technological advancement. The humans showed them their spacecraft manufacturing plant, where workers moved heavy equipment with simple mechanical aids. They visited a research center where scientists worked with dangerous materials using nothing more than protective gloves and face masks. This is our training facility, Director Park said, leading them into a large room. Inside, human soldiers were exercising. The gravity in the room changed constantly, but the humans adapted without pause. They moved from exercise to exercise, their bodies covered in sweat, but their faces showing only determination. How long can they keep this up? Minho asked, his medical curiosity obvious. The standard training session is 3 hours, Hejin replied casually, though some prefer longer workouts. 3 hours, in varying gravity, without rest. Du Jin felt his scales ripple with disbelief. During a break in the tour, Jaya pulled Du Jin aside. Captain, these humans, they're not just surviving here. They're thriving. And they seem to have no idea how extraordinary that is. She was right. The humans treated their incredible adaptability as if it were nothing special. They talked about their achievements with pride. Yes, but not because they had overcome impossible odds. They were proud simply of doing things well. Back in the meeting room, they discussed the possibility of Earth joining the Galactic Confederation. Director Park listened carefully to the requirements and benefits, asking thoughtful questions about trade, cultural exchange, and diplomatic protocols. There is one concern, Du Jin said carefully. Your world, your species, you're different from anything we've encountered before. Some members of the Confederation might be uncomfortable with that. Director Park's smile never wavered. We understand. Change can be difficult. But isn't that what makes the galaxy interesting? Finding new things, learning from each other, growing together. As they talked, He Jin worked with Su Min, sharing technical data about Earth's technologies. The young human engineer spoke quickly, excited to exchange ideas with someone from another world. Su Min's initial skepticism turned to fascination as she realized how many different approaches the humans had developed to solve problems. Your solutions are so creative, Su Min said. We would never have thought to try some of these methods. He Jin shrugged. When you live on a world that's trying to kill you, you learn to think outside the box. That casual comment made Du Jin's scales stand on end. The humans knew. They knew exactly how dangerous their world was. They just didn't see that as a limitation. As the day drew to a close, Director Park had one last surprise. We've prepared a dinner, he said. Nothing fancy, just some traditional Earth foods. Of course, we've analyzed your biology and prepared appropriate alternatives for your team. The Hanra team carefully removed their helmets in the dining room after their atmospheric sensors showed it was safe. The humans had adjusted the air mixture to be less oxygen-rich for their comfort. It was a small gesture, but it showed a level of consideration that impressed Du Jin. Watching the humans eat and talk, sharing stories and jokes, Du Jin began to understand something important. The Hanra had evolved to be strong because their world demanded it, but the humans had evolved to be adaptable because their world was even harsher. They didn't just survive through strength. They survived through intelligence, creativity, and an unshakable determination to thrive no matter what challenges they faced. As they prepared to return to the Morning Star, Director Park handed Du-Jin a data crystal. This contains information about Earth's history, culture, and scientific achievements. We hope it will help the Confederation understand us better. Du-Jin accepted the crystal with formal gratitude, but his mind was already racing. The galaxy's power structure had been stable for centuries, with the Hanra at the top. Now, everything would change. Not because the humans would challenge them. They seemed more interested in cooperation than competition, but because their very existence changed what everyone thought was possible. On the shuttle ride back to the ship, no one spoke. They were all too busy thinking about what they had seen and what it meant. The humans weren't just another species to add to the Confederation's ranks. They were something new, something that would change everything. Jaya finally broke the silence. "Captain, what do we tell the Confederation?" Du-Jin looked at the data crystal in his hand. "We tell them the truth. We tell them that the galaxy is bigger, stranger, and more wonderful than we ever imagined. And we tell them that we're not alone anymore in being children of a harsh world." The shuttle docked with the Morning Star, but Du-Jin knew that nothing would ever be quite the same again. They had come expecting to find a dead world, or, at best, simple bacteria. Instead, they had found something far more remarkable. A species that made the impossible look easy, and did it with a smile. 2 months after first contact, the Morning Star remained in Earth orbit. Captain Du-Jin spent most of his time studying the data crystal Director Park had given him. Each new piece of human history amazed him more than the last. One quiet morning, alarms blared through the ship. Jaya's voice came over the speakers. "Captain, to the bridge. Emergency situation." Du-Jin ran to the bridge, his powerful legs carrying him through the corridors faster than most species could move. When he arrived, Jaya was studying a complex series of readings on the main screen. "Long-range sensors have detected something," she said without looking up. "A cluster of asteroids has changed course. They're heading toward both Hanra and human space." Su-Min worked at her station, calculating trajectories. The cluster must have been hit by a rogue comet. Their new path will take them through 3 Hanra colony worlds and 2 human space stations. Du-Jin's scales darkened with concern. The Hanra were strong, but even they couldn't stop asteroids with their bare hands. "How long do we have?" 30 Earth days until first impact," Su-Min replied. "The colonies will need to be evacuated. Our ships can't maintain combat operations in zero gravity long enough to deflect that many asteroids. The Hanra were built for strength, not extended space operations. Their powerful muscles and dense bones made them tire quickly in zero gravity. It was one of their few weaknesses, one they didn't like to discuss." "Contact Earth Command," Du-Jin ordered. "They should know about the threat to their stations." To his surprise, Director Park responded immediately. The human's face appeared on the main screen, looking calm despite the news. "We've detected the asteroid cluster as well, Captain. We're preparing our response teams now." "Response teams?" Du-Jin asked. "Director, evacuation is the only logical choice. The time needed to deflect or destroy that many asteroids would exceed any species' endurance limits." Park smiled that same calm smile Du-Jin had seen during their first meeting. "Captain, would you be willing to meet with our crisis response team? I think we might have a solution that could help both our peoples." An hour later, Du-Jin found himself in a conference room at Earth's Space Defense Command. Engineer He-Jin stood at the front of the room, showing a detailed plan on a large screen. "The asteroids are following 3 main trajectories," He-Jin explained. "If we position defense teams here, here, and here, we can intercept all of them. Our ships can handle the ones threatening Earth stations. We'd like to help with the ones heading toward your colonies as well." The Hanra team stared at him. "The operation would take weeks," Su-Min said. "No one can fight in space that long. The physical toll." "We've done longer missions," He-Jin said simply. "Our longest continuous space operation was 3 months during the lunar crisis. This should only take about 6 weeks. Du Jin's tail twitched with disbelief. 3 months? In zero gravity? How is that possible? We rotate our crews every 72 hours, He Jin explained. And we've developed exercises that prevent muscle and bone loss in space. It's really not that difficult once you get used to it. The casual way he said this made Du Jin's scales ripple. The humans truly didn't understand how extraordinary they were, or maybe they did, and they just didn't think it was important. The Hanra Council, when informed of the human plan, rejected it immediately. We cannot rely on an untested species for our defense, the council leader said. The colonies will be evacuated. This is not open for discussion. But Director Park had anticipated this response. As the Hanra began their evacuation plans, Earth launched its defense fleet. Du Jin watched from the Morning Star as dozens of human ships moved into position. They're really going to try it, Jaya said, standing beside him at the viewing window. They're going to attempt to save everyone, whether we want them to or not. The first asteroids arrived right on schedule. The human ships moved with surprising grace, their crews working in perfect coordination despite the challenging conditions. They planted charges on the massive rocks, carefully calculating each explosion to shift the asteroids' paths away from inhabited worlds. Du Jin received regular reports from He Jin, who was coordinating the operation from Earth. The human engineer sent detailed updates about their progress, never once mentioning the physical toll the work must have been taking on the crews. After 2 weeks, the Hanra Council finally admitted they might have been wrong. They sent ships to assist the humans, but their crews could only work in short shifts. The humans adjusted their plans without complaint, fitting the Hanra ships into their rotation schedule. Your people are incredible, Jaya told He Jin during one of their daily briefings. How do you maintain such efficiency under these conditions? He Jin looked confused. What conditions? Oh, you mean the zero gravity. We just do what needs to be done. When something needs fixing, you fix it. When someone needs help, you help them. It's not complicated. But it was complicated, Du Jin thought. The humans were doing something that should have been impossible, and they were doing it while making it look easy. They worked until they were exhausted, took short breaks, then went right back to work. In the 4th week, one of the human ships reported a problem with their maneuvering thrusters. Instead of returning to Earth for repairs, the crew went outside their ship and fixed it themselves. They worked for 10 hours in space, taking turns to rest briefly in their ship's airlock. That's insane, Minho said when he heard about it. The physical strain of spacewalking for that long. Their muscles should have given out. Their bodies should have refused to continue. Maybe they don't know they should give up, Jaya suggested. Maybe that's their real strength. As the weeks passed, Du Jin began to understand what she meant. The humans hadn't evolved to be the strongest or the fastest. They had evolved to be the most stubborn, the most adaptable, the ones who simply refused to accept failure as an option. The final asteroids were deflected exactly 6 weeks after the operation began, exactly as He Jin had predicted. Not a single colony or station had been lost. The humans celebrated by inviting the Hanra crews to a party, despite being exhausted from their long mission. I don't understand your people, Du Jin told Director Park at the celebration. You do the impossible, then act as if it's nothing special. Don't you realize how extraordinary you are? Park considered this for a moment. Captain, every species is extraordinary in its own way. The Hanra are incredibly strong. Others are incredibly fast, or can see amazing things, or live in conditions we find impossible. We humans, we just keep going. That's our thing. It's not better or worse than anyone else's thing. It's just ours. Du Jin looked around the room at the human crew members. They showed signs of fatigue, dark circles under their eyes, slower movements than usual. But their spirits were high. They had pushed themselves to their limits and beyond, not because they had to, but because they could help others by doing so. The Morning Star would soon return to Hanra space with a very different report than the one Du Jin had expected to write when they first detected Earth. He would tell the Council about the humans' strength, yes, but not their physical strength. He would tell them about the strength of human determination, of their willingness to help others even at great cost to themselves, of their ability to face impossible challenges with a smile and a shrug. The humans weren't just Deathworlders like the Hanra. They were something else entirely. They were a species that looked at the impossible and saw only a challenge to overcome. And somehow, that made them the most remarkable species of all. 6 months after the asteroid crisis, the Morning Star returned to Earth. This time, Captain Du Jin didn't wear an environmental suit when he stepped onto the landing pad. The ship's doctor, Min Ho, had worked with human medical experts to develop a simple breathing mask that filtered the excess oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. It was just one of many changes that had come from cooperation between the two species. Director Park greeted him with the same warm smile as always. "Welcome back, Captain. I hope your report to the Council went well." Du Jin's scales shimmered with amusement. They're still trying to understand it. The idea that we're not the only Deathworlders in the galaxy was shocking enough. Learning that humans can surpass us in some ways, that was harder for them to accept. They walked together through the Earth Defense Command building. Human and Hanra personnel worked side by side now. Young Hanra officers learned human endurance techniques, while human crews studied Hanra strength-based technologies. The mixing of their species had created something entirely new. "The joint training program starts today," Park said as they entered the main conference room. 20 Hanra officers and 20 human crew members. The first of many, I hope. Engineer He-jin was already in the room, talking excitedly with Su-men about some new technology they were developing together. The two had become close friends during the asteroid crisis, their different approaches to problems combining to create innovative solutions. "The new ship designs are ready," He-jin said when he saw them enter. "We've combined Hanra strength-based engineering with human endurance systems. They can operate 3 times longer than traditional Hanra vessels and carry twice the payload of standard human ships." Du Jin remembered how he had once thought humans looked fragile. Now he knew better. Their strength wasn't in their muscles or bones, but in their endless ability to adapt and improve. They didn't just survive challenges, they learned from them and came back stronger. The first class of the joint training program filed into the room. The Hanra officers stood tall and proud, their scales gleaming under the lights. The human crew members looked small next to them, but their eyes showed the same determination that had saved 3 Hanra colonies. Jaya, now the program's lead instructor, stepped forward to address them. "You are here because both our species have something to teach and something to learn. The Hanra can show you how to use strength wisely. The humans can show you how to endure when strength alone isn't enough." Du Jin watched as the trainees began their first exercise. The humans showed no fear working alongside the powerful Hanra, while the Hanra had learned to respect the humans' different kind of strength. It was everything he had hoped for when he wrote his report to the Council. During the lunch break, Min Ho shared his latest research findings. "Human healing abilities are remarkable," he told Du Jin. "Their bodies don't just repair damage. They come back stronger. Break a human bone, and it heals stronger at the break point. Stress their muscles, and they grow more powerful. It's as if their entire biology is designed to overcome challenges." "That explains a lot," Jaya said. "During the asteroid crisis, I noticed the human crews performed better in the last week than they did in the first. They weren't just enduring, they were adapting." The afternoon brought more surprises. The training class ran combat simulations in varying gravity conditions. The Hanra trainees struggled when the gravity shifted, but instead of giving up, they watched how their human partners adapted and learned from them. The humans, in turn, learned from the Hanra's natural strength and fighting skills. "Look at them," Director Park said proudly. "A month ago, they were strangers who barely understood each other. Now they work together like they've been doing it all their lives." Dojin nodded. The council was worried that revealing our weaknesses to another species would make us vulnerable. Instead, sharing our strengths and weaknesses has made both our peoples stronger. Later that evening, they held a ceremony to officially mark the start of the joint training program. The room was filled with officials from both species, including several members of the Hanra Council who had finally agreed to visit Earth in person. Hajin and Sumin presented their new ship designs to the gathered crowd. The vessels would serve as both exploration ships and defense craft, combining the best aspects of both species' technology. But more importantly, they would be crewed by mixed teams of humans and Hanra working together. The galaxy is bigger than we imagined, Dojin said in his speech. For too long, the Hanra thought we were alone in being children of a harsh world. We took pride in our strength, and rightly so. But we forgot that strength comes in many forms. He gestured to the human crew members in the audience. Our new friends have taught us that true strength isn't just in powerful muscles or thick scales. It's in the determination to keep going when others would stop. It's in the willingness to help others even at great cost to yourself. It's in the ability to face impossible odds with courage and creativity. Director Park spoke next. Humans have always looked to the stars and dreamed of finding others like us. We found something better. We found friends who are different from us, who can teach us new ways of thinking and being. Together, we are stronger than either of us could be alone. The celebration lasted late into the night. Dojin watched as humans and Hanra mixed freely, sharing stories and jokes, learning about each other's cultures. Young Hei-jin was teaching a group of Hanra officers some Earth game involving cards, while Jaya explained Hanra meditation techniques to interested human crew members. What do you think the future holds? Park asked Dojin as they watched their people interact. Dojin thought about how much had changed in just 6 months. I think we've only begun to discover what our species can accomplish together. The human's ability to adapt, combined with Hanra strength, we could explore parts of space that neither of us could reach alone. And protect more worlds, Park added. There are other species out there who might need help surviving in harsh conditions. Who better to help them than 2 species who understand what it means to evolve on a death world? As the party wound down, Dojin received a message from the council. They had approved the expansion of the joint training program. Soon, there would be similar facilities on multiple worlds, with both species learning from each other. The Morning Star would remain on Earth for another month, helping to establish the program. Dojin looked forward to learning more about these remarkable humans who had changed everything he thought he knew about strength and survival. In the end, he realized that was the greatest lesson the humans had taught them. It wasn't just about being strong enough to survive. It was about being adaptable enough to thrive, creative enough to find new solutions, and determined enough to keep trying until you succeeded. The galaxy would never be the same. But thanks to the unlikely friendship between 2 species of Deathworlders, it would be better.